Welcome to the Accounting Arc Podcast, where analysis, reaction, and comedy collide to tackle the big topics from the world of accounting and beyond. Join our trio of transformation agents as they discuss the hottest topics in and out of the profession, from breaking down industry trends, to reacting to everyday events, to uncovering the hidden humor in numbers. With wisdom, insight, and a dash of levity, they're proving that accounting isn't just about the numbers. It's about life. Because after all, accounting is in everything. The Accounting Arc Podcast starts now.
Welcome back to another episode of ARC. Today we're talking about a hot topic that has come up regarding professional degrees and what the implications are with the Department of Education's definitions that then allow for borrowing limits on master's and continuing education degrees beyond your bachelor's degree. So effectively, what happened in the One Big Beautiful Bill is they proposed having limits on loan borrowing that is subsidized by the federal government for specific non-professional degrees. And now the Department of Education has come out with what that definition is. And we have learned that accounting no longer qualifies as a professional degree. So I think a good place to start this conversation, and we all have varying opinions on the merits, the implications, if this is good or bad or indifferent or what it means holistically. So I think a good place to level set is let's start with definitions. So Donny, you have a very strong opinion about the definition of professional degree. So I'll pass it off to you for that.
Well, let's back up a little bit first. And we should point out that it's not just accounting. It's also, what did you say, nursing? There's a bunch of these that we would all think of as professionals.
Architecture is not on that list.
Profession,
engineering.
Right. So it's not just accounting that's being attacked. It's quite a bit. And basically the current limitation, when you look at it, it's basically the doctor level of medicine, because psychiatry was included only if it was to the PhD, which is when then they're practicing and delivering, and law. So basically it's law and medicine become the only two. Doctor level of medicine is the only two that is elevated to this level of professional degree. So my immediate response to some of these was that, well, when we think about it in more from a learned professional, the learned professional does have a specific definition. And I was trying to find a quick source and I couldn't, but what I remember the 5 requirements there to be was education, exam, experience, and service to public, and then it's basically resulting in standards around how the work is actually performed. So there was this criteria, and part of the reason I was involved in looking in that was many years ago. At this point, I think it's well over a decade. I was involved on the IT side and looking at how do we change IT from a trade to a profession, and there was a movement going on at the national level to elevate IT to be more of a professional. And with that, we were looking at all of these criteria, and it actually kind of died out. There wasn't enough movement behind, there wasn't enough support behind it. There's certifications in IT, but not a licensure. And one of the biggest ones to me was also the service back to the public, or the duty to the public, which when you look at everything that's going on in AI right now, there is not a duty to the public being upheld in a lot of that, because there's not a lot of focus on safety and the negative impacts there. There's only a focus on pushing it forward. So that was kind of the criteria I was looking at when I went, hey, when we look professional, should we be looking at these criteria instead?
So in that review that you were looking at around IT professionals, what does a CITP count as, if not a certificate or a licensure?
CITP, you have to be a CPA. So it's actually a specialty of CPA.
And I think that that's an important distinction, right? Is understanding where these certifications come from. So as a layman, as somebody that's never looked at this from any perspective outside of I exist in this country. I am relatively well informed. To me, the definition of a professional is somebody who gets to a certain level of knowledge and education around a topic and provides that back in their career, right? And it is very difficult to not use the word profession in the definition of professional because on a regular basis, we use that word as where you're going with your education. And so when you're seeing things saying like, okay, well, accounting is no longer considered a profession for borrowing for graduate programs, nursing's not included. Like all of these things where you're like, okay, these people study a lot, they become experts in their field, right? And we all did, right? And we provide something meaningful back. And so I think it's interesting when you look at it like educators, right? Like you do have to be a licensed educator. Like you have to get a license to teach at any school, right? Yet that's not a profession by the historical definition that is limiting this. Is that the argument that we're making?
So, but let's look at what you just said. License is not required to teach. In most states it is, in certain institutions it is, but it is not a requirement to teach.
So then by that definition, you're not required to have a CPA license to do accounting. So accounting is not a profession.
I agree. The CPA is the part that differentiates it. There's a lot of people that work under the CPA to deliver accounting services.
Okay. So my argument is
otherwise you could say there's CNA or there's these other ones that work in medicine. So medicine's not a profession either because I can have non-licensed. So I don't think you can use that argument just because there's non-licensed people working in there that it's not a profession.
Right. And yet that was the argument that teachers is not a profession because not everybody is licensed, but there are licensure requirements.
Not to put yourself forward as a teacher.
If you want a job in the public education system in most states, you do have to be licensed to teach, and they have very specific licenses around different areas. Like you can be an elementary school teacher, or high school teacher, like all of these things require licensure. So like when we look at it holistically, like, yeah, there are different state laws that govern this. That's the nature of our country, right? Every state has its own opinion on how things should be governed inside of their state. And also, as a common person that's never studied this from a lawmaking perspective, when I hear professional, to me, that means somebody that has a degree, that has studied, become an expert, is career driven. It means that they are focused on bringing an extra level of expertise to whatever their chosen career is. And it's a consistent career track. It is not I'm going to go work at, McDonald's for a couple of years, and then I'm going to go, work at the bank, or, it's not finding lower level jobs that don't require education, that don't require expertise, that don't require diligence to progress in that career field. I would even argue that like there is a level of, chef that is a professional chef. Like I have known many people who have gone through many very difficult technical and advanced degrees to be able to run restaurants. And that is their chosen profession. And they've been doing it the whole time. They bring a level of expertise that other people don't. They have a level of education that other people don't. And they have spent their entire career focused on elevating and bringing more to that career track, right? But we're in different planes, right? I'm talking from the viewpoint of a human living in this society and how we use that word on a daily basis. And you're talking from the perspective of a governing body trying to figure out how to define and isolate what that is.
I agree with you. You're discussing professional, career, and intermixing all of those. I'm coming at it from a standpoint of these are people who are distinguishing themselves. They have a duty to the public, which is why we elevate them to a higher standard. And with that, there are standards that they are subject to. So that's where I'm even coming back to the teaching side, where I'm like, there's like in accounting, there are national and international standards that govern how we practice and how we conform worldwide. I am not aware of any of that on the teaching side, for example.
So is the two classifications, there's profession and trade. Is there another classification that I'm missing? Because I feel like there's something in the middle that I don't know
So
what it
under
is.
the one big beautiful bill, where they delineated is they capped the annual loans for new borrowers for graduate students of any graduate program at 20,500 per year and 50,000 for professional students. So in this particular bill, in the way the Department of Education was given, this bill to basically define the differences, there is no middle ground. If you're going to get an advanced degree that is not a
Yeah.
quote unquote professional degree, you are capped at how much you can borrow.
Interesting. So it does allow for a certain threshold of borrowing for non-professional degrees as defined within the bill. And then it's
Correct.
a higher threshold for professional degrees.
Correct. Which
Yes.
I think is like the merits of this can be debated on so many levels. And when you
Yeah.
start looking at it and digging into it, is what this is saying the pursuit of higher education not as valuable if you are not a professional? It is, I mean, that's effectively what this bill is saying. If you are
Yeah.
not pursuing a profession, then the merits of higher education are not as valuable, which of course is an attack on higher education and education in general from a completely different viewpoint and will absolutely limit access to education. And there's all sorts of implications that we can go into. But let's get back to the accounting profession. That's why we're here, right? We care about this profession. We care about what's happening next, what the implications are. Like, Byron, you're hearing Donny and I go back and forth on like, is this professional degree? Is it not? Like, what is the definition? What do you think? Like, is accounting a professional degree? I argue, yes, it should be always, especially at the graduate level.
Yeah, I mean, and I like I always refer to accounting as the profession. There's, in fact, we did some other episodes where we talked about like the difference between an industry and a profession, and I always generally refer to accounting, whether licensed or non-licensed, as a profession. And I don't know if I could necessarily go down the criteria that I use for assuming that, but I mean, unequivocally, I consider this to be a profession and should absolutely fall within the umbrella of that license of professions. I mean, if we're going to put accounting next to legal, absolutely. If we're going to put it next to medical, I think the only major distinction there is we generally aren't saving lives. But as far as
Not directly.
right. I mean,
Have money to
one could
buy
argue,
food.
sure, absolutely. I mean, but as far as, the opportunities for higher education and the ability to elevate your role in pursuing those areas of higher education, there's absolutely merit and validity to those paths. So I would 100% support accounting being considered a profession as defined by a poorly worded bill.
Well, and the Department of Education's interpretation of that bill was based on a 1965 federal law that defined profession in a very limited perspective. And also, that is so old that society has changed and how we interact and career tracks, the value of education has changed. What happens in universities has changed. All of it has. So to define the future on something historical is asinine.
And even the amount of higher educational opportunities that existed in 1965 was probably limited to
Mhm.
medicine and legal. So, that definition was based on the current environment that was significantly different. than it is today, what, 80 years later?
Agree. So I think we're all in agreement that
Yeah.
accounting, I mean, accounting is a profession. Because Liz and I were earlier just debating more what other things would be included in there. But if we focus on accounting, I think we're all in agreement there. The other one that other aspect that I thought was interesting, conflict perhaps in federal code, is the labor side of this. So when you go back
Oh.
and you look at labor classification, uh, under the Department of Labor side for what is a learned professional, because that's part of where my mind went was, well, part of this is
Sure.
we're considered part of the learned professionals. And for the people that are looking at it, it's in CAFR Title 29, Subtitle B, Chapter 5, Subchapter A, Part 541. And it talks about the learned professionals. And this is it. It says the traditional professions of law, medicine, theology. Oh, we forgot that the big bill includes theology.
Right.
Accounting,
Theology is a profession, but
accounting,
teaching is not. Nursing is not.
actuarial computation, engineering, architecture, teaching. They include various types of physical, chemical, and biological sciences, pharmacy, and other occupations that have a recognized professional status as distinguished from where what Byron brought up, the mechanical arts or skilled
Hmm.
trades. But
Interesting.
where in some instances the knowledge is of a fairly advanced type, but not within the field of science or learning. So apparently, the Department of Labor
Hmm.
says that it has to be in a field of science or learning to be considered a learned professional.
Which is also probably an outdated viewpoint, but at least that is a more inclusive and updated list of how professional is interpreted, right? And that has continuously had to be updated because of other laws, whereas this particular definition is based on something so archaic that it shouldn't exist. It needs to be updated. What are the implications for pipeline? Like, what does this mean for accounting? Because I think right now we're sitting at a point where we have so many retiring accountants. We don't have enough students graduating as it is, but what does it mean?
I mean, I think it would be impossible to say that this doesn't have potentially negative impact to the pipeline, right? Because there is certainly people entering the profession through these paths, second career professionals who, go back to
Mhm.
school and get a master's degree in tax or something to that effect. I like there's absolutely potential negative impact. And that said, I mean, thank goodness we have seen movement to create alternative pathways, which we created to already address the pipeline challenges. So I think this makes those decisions better, but we may now have a further offset that we need to resolve.
Well, I think the biggest implication for pipeline of good, educated, graduate level professionals coming out in accounting will be impacted by not giving access to anybody that doesn't come from privilege. And I think that that's a really sad side effect because our profession struggles with diversity at the forefront and struggles in recruiting people to this profession outside of, traditional white privileged families that promote accounting as a profession because they understand the value. And now, if you don't have access to funding, you don't have privilege, or you don't have money in your family, like this is not going to be a degree program you can afford at that level. And that's really sad. Like, I don't think that provides a good hope for the future.
In today's world, cyber threats don't just target big businesses. They target you. Your small office or home office is at risk.
There are a lot of solutions out there. Not all of them have the same level of security. The Soho Protection Package is designed to provide proactive cybersecurity solutions.
If your firm is looking for assistance in developing your personalized IT policy, connect with an advisor today at link.improvetheworld.net/Soho Cyber. Gain peace of mind that you have the right technology in place to stay protected.
I agree with you on the principle side of that, which is that, this is an opportunity, but I don't agree that you have to get a master's degree to have that. There, especially with the reduction of the requirements for licensure, the reduction back down to the 120, you don't need a master's degree. I don't have a master's degree. You don't need a master's degree anymore to be part of the profession. So I don't really see a huge negative impact necessarily on the lack of funding for a master's degree in accounting, or the lack of access to additional funding for a master's degree in accounting to be a huge pipeline issue. And the research that the Illinois Society did, which us at the center collaborated on, actually also showed from the student's perspective that the money, even when it was at the 150, was not a significant barrier to any of the classifications of students that had voiced that.
So I think currently we're still sitting in a moment where the majority of states have a 150-hour requirement, which, yes, you can get by supplementing an undergraduate degree to get that licensure. So absolutely, a master's degree is not required to get a CPA license, but it does help quite a bit. And then I would also argue that at the upper echelons of our profession, like, you're not going to get a really great CFO job without having a master's degree, without having any kind of advanced education. It is very difficult to work your way up to that, and it limits the advancement. Whereas if you come to it with that advanced degree, your earning potential is higher, your career trajectory is higher, and opportunities are bigger. And that, like, I can go pull a bunch of research to support that at any point in time, but we are maybe progressing to the point where it becomes not as relevant as education changes, as AI influences how people are learning, as people prove back that this may not be the most effective way to get that knowledge. But today, where we sit, is the vast majority of states require 150 hours, and the vast majority of higher opportunities at the upper echelon of this profession are looking for people with graduate degrees.
The number of states that have changed that requirement in the last year is way faster than it was in the past. So I think that's a short-term view. The argument that you're making and the research that you're citing about the need for the college degree is part of the reason we're in a lot of the problem that we have right now, which is this disregard, or this looking at, you can't make a good job as someone that only is in a trade. And if you look at the data now about all of the college graduates that cannot get a job and have all this huge debt, that's the result of everyone saying, you got to go and get a college degree. You got to go and get a college degree, instead of go learn a good trade, which might be a better fit for you, and go and make a good living doing that. Because that's the side that, when we talk about pipeline, those are the ones that are really hurting right now. It's why all of our mechanics and construction, all of these prices are increasing, because they can't get the people.
I don't disagree with that. I think that the myth of higher education being the only path in America is absolutely a myth. And I also know that when we look at mass amounts of trajectory of students, if you limit educational opportunities, particularly when you're looking at accounting, you're limiting career trajectory. And that is what I'm concerned about, in that the only people that will have access to that will be people of privilege, because they have the money to pay for the degree and they don't need the loan. And that's the concern that I have for our profession, is that we are limiting the long-term implications of people's earning power inside of this profession by saying that this isn't a profession.
So wait, I think we all agree that this is a profession. So I don't think that's anything any of us
But
is.
the federal government doesn't agree.
I think we all agree on that. So the question is, what are the implications to us? And that's what we've been talking about right now. And you're saying the implication is to pipeline, and I'm saying to me, there's not a technical implication to pipeline. And when we look at this whole, you cited having to go up to the CFO level and all these things, to me, that is also a view of privilege. You don't have to get to the CFO level to be making a good life in accounting. You don't have to get to the partner level to have a good life in accounting.
No, I don't disagree with that. I mean, I think you can do a lot in pretty much any career with or without education if you work hard and you make your own opportunities and all of the other stuff that's reiterated. What I'm saying is like earning potential is capped. I'm not saying you can't make a good living. I am saying the potential of your entire career without opportunity or access to advanced degrees does get limited. And that's the part that I am fearful will continue to like further isolate and segregate this profession.
I agree with you on the principle of it. I don't think it's limits or segregates it.
Do you think, as like by and large, people taking out loans for masters of accounting degrees come from privilege?
I'm gonna say no, but I also don't think a master's in accounting degree is required to be successful or to earn a good living.
Well, but that's the difference. Like, I'm arguing that the holistic, like, long-term trajectory is limited, not that you can't do it, not that there is no opportunity, not that you don't have a good career, that the potential is limited. And that's where I feel like we'll end up in a privilege cycle.
I don't understand why the getting to that highest level is a requirement for even long term. If I can make a good living, provide for my family, own my own house, all of these things, and I'm not a partner, I'm not a CFO, why is that a problem? Why
It's
do
not
I
a
have to
problem.
become part of the elite class? Because that's
You don't have
effectively what
to,
it's
but you
doing.
should have the choice to. Like, it is not a requirement, but limiting access is a problem.
And your choice is to save the money, fund your education, and work through it.
Yes, and I think foundationally we disagree on what like systematic dismantling of access means, right? Because to me, it is always, you should always have that choice, but you should have that choice. Everybody should have that choice. They should have access to education if they want it to pursue what they want in long-term career advancement. But what the federal government is doing here is limiting loan access in a way that makes it very difficult for people that don't have the money already to get that education to pursue that. And so it's saying, okay, well, you are capped now. Like, that's fine. You make that decision for yourself because you don't have the money. What I'm saying is, I want everyone to make that decision for themselves and have access to that. And if they don't want it, that's one thing. But if they can't have it, that's another thing. Not that it's bad. Like, not that you have to be a cog in the system, not that you have to pursue the highest level of everything. You should have the opportunity to. And that's where I foundationally disagree with this classification and this limitation of access.
So I want to make sure because you're coming back to disagreeing with the classification. We all disagree with that classification. I think the reasoning for why some of this would move forward and the fact that the impact on the profession, again, because that's what we were discussing is the impact on the profession. I do not view this as having as huge of an impact on the profession.
I almost wonder if they're, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead,
No, no,
Donny.
no, go
Finish
ahead,
your
go
thought.
ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I almost wonder, looking at the potential outcomes of this shift. I mean, there's no doubt higher education is they're going to have to figure something out, right? Because a lot of programs are going to be lost because they're just not going to have the students to allow for them. We're also in a shift where higher education has become more accessible just through remote learning and different things. So I just wonder if, maybe the rosy glasses that I try to wear at times, if this doesn't actually force the higher education system to bring down the cost of these higher education opportunities, because frankly that's where I get really frustrated, because I think the cost of education has become irrationally obscene, and it has been a result of all this free money that the government has allowed. The universities have just, lined their pockets and built buildings based on debt, student loan debt. So maybe by the some sort of optimism, this would actually force the university system to make a shift to make it affordable for people to get these higher education degrees
Well,
without
and I think that's
obscene
the
loans.
hope. Like the hope is that by limiting access to loans, limiting what people can pay, the universities will say, "Oh, we need to lower tuition, so let's make this more efficient. Let's figure this out." In reality, we'll see what happens. My
Yeah.
cynical side says that isn't going to happen because universities are like absolutely horrendous to make change at and include a ton of red tape and bureaucracy that are part of the problem. Like the reason it is so expensive is partly because of that, right? And so, I don't think any of us disagree that education needs like a complete revamp, like in totality. Um, and also, in the short term, those universities are still expensive, and people who don't have the money will not be able to go if they want to.
100% agree on that one. That's been one of the things I've been looking at on the university side, which is that system's broken, higher education's broken. And as we look at things, there's too much of it and it costs too much. So even I was just in a presentation where somebody from ASCPA was talking about the cost. And it was interesting to hear the kind of rumblings in the cost to become a CPA. It was interesting to hear kind of the rumblings. The rumblings in the room were around, kind of what's wrong with these kids. What the people didn't realize was that from when those of us that were in the room, which the majority of us were older, so I would say, let's say 90s was when we went through stuff, the cost of education is like 5 to 10 times what it
Oh yeah.
was when we went through school. And then I purposely also looked up the CPA exam because that was another data point they brought up, and definitely heard people go, "Oh, these kids, like, what's wrong with them? Why can't they just pay for the exam?" And I was like, well, in 1990, the exam was $250 for all four parts. In 2025, it is now $1,700 for all four parts. That's a 6.8 times increase in the cost just to sit for the exam. So I was bringing these data points back up, and then you see that tenor change. So I completely agree. It's like this education and the cost of higher education is broken. And if we were to try and fix something, that's to me where we should be focusing that fix on, is really making sure that higher education is more accessible by making it more affordable. And part of that, unfortunately, is going to come down to a reduction in the number of higher ed institutions, because there's just this whole competition around them that is actually not creating lower prices. It's actually inflating cost of operations, which is being passed on to the students rather than helping the students.
Yeah, it's a mess. And there has to be a big change. I don't think this is the right change. I think limiting access to higher education is a problem because we still live in the society that is based on what has been built to date. And I will maintain that there's lots of research showing that your earning potential is higher if you have a higher degree. Now, whether you're sunk in debt and that causes less cash flow or it causes worse life situations, we can debate all of that all day long. And people should have the
Well,
choice. And I think that we should have fair access to education, especially in this country that prides itself on pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. Like you can't do that without any support. Like it will just create greater segregation in the class system and greater differences in the ability to even become any kind of professional, whether it's on the list or not.
And just simply changing the definition of what is considered a professional is not the right way to achieve any of the goals of maybe trying to course correct the obscene cost of higher education. I mean, the ripple effect Donny talked about, the classification of exempt versus non-exempt employees. This certainly puts, potential challenges there as to what it like. I mean, are accounting firms going to have to start paying hourly for CPAs one day? That's going to be ugly if that becomes a ripple down effect. So the fight to make sure the classification of professionals is corrected, I think is a worthy fight to make sure that we don't lose sight of the different groups that we all exist in and our contribution to society.
I think our final call to action to all of you listening is when you see this come up, because AICPA is working on it, that's going to trickle down to legislation and lobbying at the state level. When you see that call for action to contact your legislators and make sure that this gets fixed, encourage all of you take that action and ensure that accounting is included in this list of professions.
Absolutely.
And I think holistically talk about these things and find your safe environment to debate it out and talk about it. Like these two humans, I know we can debate and disagree and argue and hug it out and always be there supporting each other in like the pursuit of knowledge. And I think it's very important that we all find those communities and work towards having healthy conversations and open conversations and listen and have viewpoints that may not be the same. And I know that this all goes back to politics in some direction or another, regardless of whether we want it to or not. That's the society we live in. So find your people to talk about this with, or discuss it in the chat below the show. We'd love to have this conversation further.
Well said.
All right, thanks everyone. We'll hope to see you on the next episode.
See y'all.
The Center for Accounting Transformation provides business professionals with a network for utilizing innovations that are ready for adoption, the training and resources necessary to apply those innovations, and an opportunity to engage the talent and community needed to further the pursuit of innovative accounting practices that drive responsible and mindful business performance. Find out more at our website, www.improvetheworld.net. And if you're interested in sharing your own transformation stories, please contact us there.